When you sleep alone in a dark forest and you hear wild animals approaching you, you better learn how to let go of your fear of death. You know, because when you feel like prey, you are prey, both in the forest and in society. In this video we will talk about fear and letting go, and I will give you my perspective on it, and I will draw a few stories from the forest and from other times of my life when I confronted my fears or had to let go of something. So, hello, I'm David and welcome to my channel. In 2022 I lived around 100 days in a forest, and I had wild boars approaching my camp probably every other night, alright? And you know, they are not the most dangerous animals, but you know, when you're alone in a dark forest and you hear like a pack of boars approaching you, that is frightening. So in the beginning, especially the first night when that happened, and it was, I think, the first night when I slept there, I definitely had a lot of fear because, you know, everything was new. I had no idea where I was really, you know, I didn't plan anything, you know, I just went out there and figured that I'm going to find a way somehow, you know, and you know, that was back in the day the way how I thought I would grow the most, how I would develop the best. And I guess it was a subconscious thing from my higher self that was leading me towards this, because you know, I was only following my intuition, you know, like from a rational, objective level that was completely nuts, you know, but you know, it was the right thing to do for me. Anyway, as I said, when those boars approached me, in the beginning it was super terrifying, but you get used to everything. And in this case, you know, I just reframed this fear with actually excitement, you know. And that is true for almost every situation in my life so far. As soon as I'm in the situation, I kinda get used to it and I find a way how to handle it. Because we humans, we are very strong. You are way stronger than you think you are. And the only reason you don't know it is because you don't force yourself into that situations, you know. But living in a forest, that's for us monkeys supernatural, you know. Some deeper instincts are just taken over and you know how to behave, you know how to deal with the things, you know. And it's so interesting how your body is reacting, you know, because you are, you know, 1 second you're sleeping and then you hear like a loud noise, maybe 2 meters, 3 meters away from you, and I was just lying in a hammock, you know, I wasn't really secured. And you hear this noise, and all of a sudden, you know, your whole body gets flushed with adrenaline, you know. 1 second you're sleeping, next second you're wide awake, literally wide awake. And then you're sitting there and you're just waiting, and you feel like there is this presence that's you know, that's attention is on you, and your attention is on the presence, you know, even though you cannot localize it 100%, but you know it's there, you know, you can feel it. And that oftentimes was enough, I felt, because usually the boars then turned around or tried to get to my bag and get my food out of there, what they couldn't manage. And as soon as they went away, you know, you directly fell back asleep like a stone. You know, it's a very raw and real way to get to learn your body and your whole human vessel, kinda, you know, because this is just so far away from our society life, but our society life is so unnatural. It has nothing to do with our, you know, our development as humans, or as monkeys rather. So very quickly I learned to reframe it, and whenever I heard the boars coming, it was actually feeling of excitement, and you know, it was more like my neighbors come back, you know. You know, there was like no human being there, you know, and whenever you see a wild animal, it's, you know, it's a special thing, you know. And I wouldn't have done this with wolves or bears, obviously, but with boars it was kind of fine, you know. And there in that forest where I was, there were no wolves and bears anyway, as far as I know. So, you know, it was all rather safe. The most dangerous thing was storms, you know, falling trees, falling branches. Those were the real dangers, you know. And just in a hammock, you know, lying there, and you know, it's like the wind is, you know, carrying from left to right, and there it's the same, you know. After the second storm, I was like, okay, you know, if it happens, then it happens. If a tree kills me here, then a tree kills me here. Just hope that I not get half killed, you know what I mean? That would have been rough. But I kind of just accepted, you know, whatever happened, and you know, let go of the fear, just very naturally, because when you're in that situation, that fear is just so not helpful. And that's something I experienced in several areas in my life. You know, whenever I had and tackled my fear head on, then in the situation I was very able to handle it, and just realizing the fear was the real problem. You know, for example, when I did stand-up comedy for the first time, I was writing jokes for, I think, more than a year before I went on stage the first time. I even did a actor course for 3 months, you know, to learn stage presence and everything, you know, all just avoiding that first time going on stage with my jokes, because that's one thing about stand-up comedy. When you are going on stage, you are experiencing a life or death situation, you know. It's not true, it's not a real life or death situation, but you know, deep down subconsciously from tribal times, it's like, if I'm embarrassing myself so hardcore now that I get discarded from the tribe, you know. And this is like every single night when you get on stage with stand-up comedy, that feeling inside of you. And that's why people say that public speaking is one of the biggest fears people have, because it's actually the underlying fear of death. And that's true for most things, you know. Most of our fears are the underlying fear of death. And when you are able to confront it in a way that is, you know, that is not really killing you, I think there is real benefit in managing your fears, you know. And this is true for the big fears and for the smaller fears. Yeah, let's say when I'm outside and I approach a woman on the street, you know, there you feel fear, or at least I feel fear directly before I do it, but I still do it, and it usually works very fine, you know. It's not like that I get every number or that I get on a date or whatever, but you know, just being in the situation itself and getting over that hurdle, you know, confronting your fear, that alone is a win in itself, you know. And maybe you have heard about the backwards law. The acceptance of a negative experience is in itself a positive experience, and the pursuit of a positive experience is in itself a negative experience. So the only thing you have to do when you are confronting your fears is confronting your fears. You know, you don't have to manage anything else but just to do it. There's no result that's attached to it. At least that's how I experienced it. Yeah. And you know, and doing this is so healing, you know, because, for example, now back to the forest, I was spiritual back then, but you know, I had some doubts, so I just put it to the test, you know, and I got rewarded for that so much, and I got so secure in my faith and my beliefs that really, you know, gave me a lot of security, you know, way more than any environmental security could give me. Aside from that, you know, nature is always so healing, you know. I could make peace with people that hurt me, you know, getting rid of those ego stories, or when I hurt people, of course. Same thing, forgiving yourself. All those elements are so important, and yeah, we in society, we just don't get to do the real important things because we're just always working, you know. And you know, I'm not above it. Like I am, you know, I'm right now in this rat race a little bit myself, you know. I mean, I'm doing kind of cool jobs, but it's still, you know, 60, 70, 80 hours of work a week. And yeah, there's just, you know, if we don't take care of the important things, I think, that are really meaningful to us, we might get trapped. And one very big thing that is keeping us back and holding us back is our fears. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. If you would like to see a video where I walk the Camino Santiago for 1,900 kilometers in 80 days, you can click here. Thank you very much for watching, my friend, and goodbye.